Stop playing, pass the phone to mommy. When mommy's not playing, pass the phone to the son, to the daughter, to cousin. And they played nonstop. And the reason they did that is because it moved them from poverty to the middle class. Come on, Mama, please. That was the start of Play to Earn. You familiar with Play to Earn?
I'm getting familiar with Play to Earn. I recently bought my daughter a crypto bot because she's a gamer, and I was like, well, if you're gonna play, you might as well earn something while you're doing it. So I used to play video games when I was younger, and it kind of just faded off, but I'm coming back.
The fact that this model exists on chain means you earn from playing. So in the Meta Nice project, you saw Deli, I'm the dev for his project. You get a chance, go to metanice.com. I'm not shilling. I just want you to be able to follow the link to the smart contract link to scan, and you can see that I did that project. But we were trying to engage the community, and we launched that project around August and September of last year. That's when all the flippers, I said it wrong, flippers, I don't give them the respect of an ER. Flippers. That's when folks who tracked on the DeFi side of the house, that's when they came into the space because they weren't satisfied how they crashed the ICO market. If you're one of those flippers, I don't care, come at me later. You know people saved you in January, February, and March of 2001. You know they did. If it wasn't for people, you and your ICO craze and crypto would have crashed and burned and it wouldn't be around now. It was artists that saved you, flipper. Sorry, I had to get that out. I'm passionate about that one. You know I am. So, around that time, the flippers entered this space and the art wasn't good enough. It just wasn't enough. It wasn't about the artist, the journey, the story. They had to have a value add. They understand that, right? They didn't care about you artists. Remember, they stepped over Basquiat on their way to their Wall Street office. Ooh, see, I had to let that marinate a bit. Now, Basquiat dies, and they're the first one to tell you, if you want to become wealthy, go get you a Basquiat. But at the time, the people who dealt in flipping and trading everything under the sun stepped over Basquiat and casually mentioned that the mayor should clean up the city as they went and made all that money. Well, what's happened now is from 2017 to 2021, that's what happened. You have folks stepping over artists, you flippers, you in these rooms spewing this nonsense on what makes a project valuable or not. And all you're doing is stepping over the Basquiats of this space, of this world, crushing their dreams. And then along came Beeple. And that joker stitched together all that imagery for all those days. And he took it to one of them auction houses. I can't remember if it was Christie's or Sotheby's. And he sold it on chain for $60-some million. And that woke up two communities. It woke up the artists who were struggling and said, oh, this is an outlet. I don't want to die like Basquiat on the street. I do want an audience, and I don't want to ask permission. I don't want a gallery owner to gatekeep me and prevent my art from getting out because I don't have the right art pedigree. So I can come into this space decentralized, and I can get that movement, and I can move forward. So that group came in, and ooh, we were so good for it. If I start saying some NFT names and you recognize them, tell me y'all recognize Nyla and Long Necky Ladies, a little 13-year-old girl that minted her NFT. Nobody? Oh, that hurts my heart. No, hold on. He gonna get my point. I just gotta suffer through this a moment. That if I said, tell me you know about Bored Ape Yacht Club, every hand would have went up. But if I tell them that there's a millionaire 13-year-old black girl that minted Long Necky Ladies and she is fire, I don't get no hands and it hurts my heart. Thank you. Thank you, I got a hand. Oh, thank you. Sorry, help me.
Well, you bring up a great point. By the way, my name is Jamar, the crypto politician, so pleasure to meet everybody here. But he brings up a great point about that wealth gap, right? And so if we see that how it operates in art, how we see it operates in gaming, it lets us know about the opportunities that we have for economic empowerment, particularly in our community. So in the art community, like you said, NFTs woke up a lot of those artists saying like, whoa, I no longer have to be a starving artist. But how do I create the community that allows me to garnish those resources, organize those resources so that now I can no longer be a starving artist? So I want us to always come back to this one point. Wealth creation is the new civil rights movement. Say that with me. Wealth creation is the new civil rights movement. Right? We've gotten our gotten our head knocked in, got knocked down for being poor. But why not put that same energy, put that same fire, put that same fierceness into building wealth? Right, as he said that the Wall Street bankers were walking over Basquiat on their way to their office. And the moment that he passed, now all of a sudden they're the ones that are telling us what is valuable. So particularly in our community, what we need to be focused on is we define and we validate what our wealth is instead of waiting for somebody else to capitalize on our culture that we spend all this time building, curating, promoting. Now we can be the ones that are the beneficiaries of it.
I just want to add a point to that because I think for me when I look at Black wealth gap specifically, it's very intersectional for me. Partly, being a Black woman, but also being a Kenyan who is now living in the States and has access and resources that I otherwise wouldn't have had in Kenya, right? I look at what is happening on the African continent now with countries saying we're no longer outsourcing our natural resources to have those products sold back to us. We are going to produce the chocolate that comes from the cacao that you get from our country. We are going to keep our natural resources here and learn what we need to learn to process it to make the final product that we will then sell to you. Otherwise, we're not doing it anymore. I think that is something that is becoming very relevant in the time that we're living, is because we understand what resources we have as Black people, but we've never really had this movement where we're all coming together. And I think it was mentioned here on the stage earlier that we've kept to that mentality of each trying to go be the number one and have 19 number ones instead of coming together. And I think, as we each begin to stand up and recognize each other and we begin to say, I see you, I see you, I see you, I see you, and then say, hey, let's bring together what we are doing in this space. Let me recognize the natural, tendency that you have to build community, the intelligence that you have to grow a project and, be direct with it. Bringing the natural abilities that we have and making those be what we are using to create resources and wealth instead of trying to climb all over each other to look good when we end up looking bad because we're separated.
You're bringing up an amazing point about what I'm hearing from you is in community building is also nation building, yes. Right? And so if you look at it from the perspective of nation building, if we're trying to be 19 number ones versus taking our collaborative efforts and taking our collaborative visions and saying, all right, how do we incorporate what you're doing into a larger plan and into a farther looking plan so that we're more powerful as a group. Anybody in here drive a Hyundai or ever driven a Hyundai or driven a Kia? Like 20 years ago, 25 years ago, nobody wanted a Hyundai. Nobody wanted a Kia, right? But what the Korean business groups, what they did is they all collaborated together. And now Kia and Hyundai are major powerhouses here in the automotive market here in America. That's because they worked together. So particularly in wealth building and wealth generation and wealth creation is finding what are the areas that we agree upon instead of the areas that we don't disagree upon, that we do disagree upon, and allowing that to be the cohesive glue for us So I believe in intersectionality. I believe also that one of our biggest challenges is recognizing we're in a game where it's not about playing fair, it's about power and survival. And when we're playing a game to be competitive and somebody else is playing a game for power and survival, we will always lose. Because survival means something much more different than somebody that's just competing. So if we start looking at wealth generation, wealth creation, and this wanting to close this wealth gap, it goes back to being able to own our industry. So like I said, in Kenya, it's not just, all right, we have the cocoa farmers. How are you going to get it to where you need to go? How are you going to get it processed, right? How are you going to distribute that internationally? And being willing to have that 20, 30, 40, 50-year game plan where you start off as a farmer, but grow that into an entire industry.
I love that you brought that up, specifically with looking at Web3 and how it's being adapted to the supply chain, right? I think it's a great segue into what we can build internationally as Black people, reaching out across to our brothers and sisters and saying, hey, we have the natural resources here. If we tap into each other and look at growing our markets together, we can provide you the natural resources. You can also work, like here, we can work at building capital and all of that and sending it back to build up those systems and processes like you're saying, making sure you're looking at how do we get the technology applied to actually do the supply chain management? How do we get the infrastructure built to then do the transportation system and to get it out into the international world? And that's where I think